She walked in like she didn't belong. Torn sneakers, a faded gym bag, shoulders straight, eyes steady, the kind of look that doesn't ask for permission because it's seen too much to care. Inside the Empire Boxing Club, where the walls gleamed white and the air smelled of privilege, everything stopped. The music, the chatter, even the sound of fists hitting heavy bags. And then came the laugh, sharp, cruel. Ava Monroe, two-time world champion, self-proclaimed, queen of the ring, the undefeated face of arrogance, looked her up and down and smirked. "This isn't a charity, sweetheart." Her voice echoed like a slap. Around her, people chuckled, some whispered, but no one stepped in. Because in places like this, power speaks loud, and money decides who matters. The girl's name was Amara Johnson, 18, from the streets of Portmore, Jamaica. She had crossed oceans, chasing a dream that the world told her didn't belong to her. By day, she scrubbed office floors for people who never looked her in the eye. By night, she fought shadows, memories, and a hunger the rich could never understand. She had nothing, but she had everything that mattered. That day, under those white lights, something unthinkable happened. The arrogant champion who lived for cameras was about to face something she couldn't film, couldn't spin, couldn't buy pure, unstoppable will. Because when arrogance meets hunger, only one survives. What if the girl they mocked became the one who rewrote history? If stories of justice, redemption, and true strength move you, hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Because you're about to witness how humiliation turned to glory and how one black girl fighter reminded the world what it means to fight for dignity. Inside the Empire Boxing Club, everything gleamed. The floors, the mirrors, even the sweat seemed expensive. It was the kind of place where every punch sounded rehearsed, where ambition wore designer gloves and dreams had a price tag. The air was cold, not from the air conditioning, but from the kind of arrogance that fills rooms like perfume. And in the center of it all stood Ava Monroe, live streaming to 2 million followers, her golden gloves glinting under the lights. "Welcome back, champs," she purred into her phone camera, flexing an arm carved by years of privilege and applause. "Queen of the ring, checking in." Hearts flooded the screen. Emojis, praise, worship. Ava Monroe didn't just fight opponents, she conquered audiences. But today, she was about to face something that wouldn't fit her script. The gym door creaked open. For a moment, no one moved. Then she walked in Amara Johnson, small frame, dark skin that seemed to swallow the light, torn sneakers dragging a whisper across the polished floor. She looked like a misprint in a glossy magazine. Conversations froze. The rhythm of leather on sandbags stopped mid-beat. The silence felt heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. Ava's head turned. One look, one smirk, and the room's temperature dropped another 10 degrees. "Well," she said, loud enough for every camera to hear, "looks like someone took a wrong turn. This isn't your neighborhood, honey." The laughter came quick, short, sharp, safe, because that's what people do when power laughs. They join in. Amara didn't flinch. Her gaze lifted, calm, steady, unbroken. She didn't say a word, but something in that silence felt louder than any insult. The kind of silence that belongs to people who've already fought battles no one else could see. From the corner office, Frank Dawson stepped out. The veteran trainer's eyes scanned the room, then landed on the newcomer. "She's not lost," he said, holding a clipboard. "Amara Johnson. She's here on the youth scholarship." A few heads turned. Whispers rippled through the gym. "Scholarship? Here?" Ava blinked, then laughed. A slow, cruel laugh that cut through the quiet. "A scholarship? In my gym?" Frank's jaw tightened. "It's my gym, Ava, and she earned her spot." Ava's eyes narrowed, sharp and glinting like polished steel. "Oh, did she?" she asked. "Let's find out." She stepped closer, her perfume thick in the air, her smile razor thin. 3 rounds. You last, you stay. If not, she made a dismissive flick of her hand, as if shooing away a stray thought. "You can crawl back to wherever you came from." The room pulsed with anticipation. Phones lifted, cameras rolled. They wanted a show. Ava always gave them one. Amara's lips parted slightly, not from fear, but from breath. Her eyes never left Ava's. 3 rounds? She asked quietly. 3 rounds, Ava said, her grin widening. "Fine," Amara replied. Her voice was soft, but it carried, slicing through the static. For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. The laughter died. Even Ava hesitated, thrown off by the girl's composure. There was something in those eyes, a stillness, a weight that didn't belong to amateurs. Frank's gaze lingered on her, a flicker of recognition tightening his chest. He'd seen that look before, not in champions, in survivors. As Amara tightened the strap on her worn gloves, the gym held its breath. Somewhere deep inside that polished palace of pride, a storm was gathering. No one knew it yet, but by the time it broke, the Queen of the Ring would never laugh the same way again. The locker room was quiet, too quiet. Just the hum of fluorescent lights and the muffled thud of gloves hitting bags outside. It smelled like sweat, leather, and nerves. Amara sat on the wooden bench, fingers tracing the cracked surface of her worn-out gloves. Her reflection in the smudged mirror didn't look like a fighter. She looked like someone who'd been fighting her whole life. Frank Dawson leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her. "Kid," he said, softly, "you don't have to do this. That woman's been world champ twice. She's faster, stronger, meaner than anyone you've faced. This isn't worth getting hurt over." Amara didn't answer at first. She was too busy wrapping her hands with tape borrowed from the gym's supply closet. The tape tore unevenly like her chances. "I've been hurt worse," she finally said. Frank frowned. "This isn't the streets. This is professional boxing. It's different." She looked up, her eyes calm but burning. "Different for you. Same for me." He opened his mouth, then stopped. There was something in her tone, something final. Amara took a deep breath, her voice steady but low. "You see, back home in Portmore, I didn't fight for medals. I fought to eat. I fought to keep the lights on. I fought so my mother wouldn't have to." She paused, the air thick with memory. "When I was 10, a boy twice my size tried to steal our groceries. I broke his nose. When I was 12, I started betting fights in alleys. I never lost. Not because I was the best, but because losing meant going hungry." Her eyes drifted down to her hands, small, scarred, trembling only from exhaustion. "I came here 6 months ago, got a cleaning job downtown, 16 hours a day, offices, bathrooms, trash cans. I share a room with 3 people, no space, no sleep. Every dollar I send home, every bruise I keep." She swallowed hard, then smiled faintly. "So no, coach, I'm not afraid of getting hurt. I'm afraid of staying invisible." Frank stepped closer, lowering his voice. "But she's not just anyone, Amara. Ava Monroe isn't going to go easy on you. She'll humiliate you in front of everyone." Amara looked at him in the mirror. Her reflection didn't blink. "She can try, but I've already been humiliated by life. She can't take what's already been stripped away." The trainer said nothing. For the first time, he noticed the fire behind those tired eyes, the kind of fire no training could create. "You really think you can beat her?" he asked quietly. Amara tightened the last wrap around her wrist and exhaled. "Hunger," she said, each syllable heavy, "drives me more than fear ever could." The words hung in the air like smoke, filling every corner of the room. Frank had trained champions, seen prodigies, molded legends, but he'd never heard a fighter speak like that. Not with bravado, not with ego, but with truth, raw and unpolished. She stood, testing her gloves, her movements sharp, deliberate. Outside, they were calling her name. The crowd wanted blood. Ava wanted a show. Amara turned toward the door. Her breath steadied. The tremor in her hands was gone. She carried storms in her chest, Frank would later recall. And tonight, she would let the thunder speak. By the time Ava Monroe started her live stream, half the gym had already pulled out their phones. The Queen of the Ring knew her audience, and she knew how to feed them. With the camera angled just right, sweat glistening under the lights, she flashed a smile that could sell gloves, sneakers, or pride itself. "You guys aren't going to believe this," she said, her tone dripping with amusement. "Some random girl just walked into my gym asking to train. So I'm going to do what I do best, teach her some humility." The comment section exploded instantly. Fire emojis, laughing faces, clapping hands. "Crush her," one user typed. "Put her in her place," another added. Within minutes, the view count hit 20,000. Every second, it climbed higher. "She looks scared already," someone wrote. "This is going to be fun." The chat turned savage, like sharks circling the scent of blood. "Poor thing," one person said. "She doesn't even look like she belongs in the same room." "Send her back to wherever she came from," another chimed in. Ava laughed, reading the comments aloud, feeding off the cruelty like, "Oxygen. You heard them, right?" she said into the camera. "Don't worry, we'll make this quick." Across the gym, Frank Dawson watched, his arms folded, a storm brewing behind his steady eyes. He'd been around fighters long enough to recognize danger, not from fists, but from pride. Ava's kind of pride was blinding. It made her reckless. But what worried him more wasn't Ava's arrogance, it was Amara's silence. Amara stood near the corner, hands at her sides, not moving, not speaking. The chaos around her didn't seem to touch her. It was as if she had built a wall inside herself, one no insult could break through. Her face was unreadable, calm in a sea of noise. Ava turned the camera toward her. "See that? She's not even talking. Guess she's scared." The comments erupted again. "She's shaking. She's done before she starts. This'll be over in seconds." But Amara wasn't shaking. Her breathing was slow, even. Her eyes locked on the ring, not the crowd, not Ava, not the cameras, just the ring. The space where words meant nothing and truth had a heartbeat. Frank stepped closer, his voice low. "You sure about this, kid? You don't owe her anything." Amara didn't look away from the ring. "I know," she said quietly. "But people like her think silence means weakness. They don't know silence is how you save your strength." Ava kept streaming, narrating every smirk, every glance, every second. "You ready, sweetheart?" she taunted, waving her gloves for the camera. "Because when I'm done, you'll wish you'd never walked in here." The comments cheered louder, the hearts and emojis flooding the screen faster than the feed could keep up. "End her career before it starts. Show her what real boxing looks like. Queen energy." The gym had turned into a stage. The fight hadn't even begun, and already the world had picked its sides. Amara inhaled slowly, her fingers brushing against the tape around her wrists. The sound of Ava's voice, the laughter, the taunts, they blurred into static. She wasn't listening anymore. Frank watched her, uneasy. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than a fight. It felt like a storm about to break open. In that moment, Amara closed her eyes, letting the noise fade. When she opened them again, there was nothing left but stillness. She wasn't angry. She wasn't afraid. She was ready. The world was laughing now. But soon, they'd stop. The gym door creaked open again, just as the noise from Ava's live stream reached its peak. Heads turned. Conversations fell flat. What stepped through wasn't another spectator, or a trainer, or a fan. It was an older man, broad shoulders beneath a weathered coat, hands scarred from a lifetime of work. His eyes scanned the room until they found her. "Lightning," he said. The single word cracked through the chatter like thunder. The room froze. Ava lowered her phone, her smile faltering. Frank Dawson turned sharply, eyebrows knitting. "Lightning?" he repeated. "Who's lightning?" The man stepped forward, his heavy boots thudding against the polished floor. The Jamaican accent in his voice was unmistakable, thick with the weight of memory. "That girl?" he said, pointing toward Amara. "You all see her as some lost kid. But back home in Portmore, we knew her by another name." A hush swept through the gym. Even Ava stopped smirking. Frank frowned, glancing at Amara. "What's he talking about?" Amara's breath caught. "Uncle, please," she whispered. "Not here." But Elijah Brown wasn't the kind of man to stay silent. His gaze swept the room, steady and cold. "They should know," he said. "They should know what kind of storm they're inviting." Frank blinked, still trying to piece it together. "Storm?" Elijah's lips tightened. "You've all heard of the underground fights in Portmore, haven't you? The ones where men twice her size went home broken? She was just a kid then, but she earned her name the hard way, because when lightning struck, it didn't miss twice." Murmurs rippled through the gym. Ava scoffed under her breath, but there was an edge in her voice now. "You expect me to believe this little charity case is some kind of street legend?" Elijah turned toward her, his tone calm but sharp as a blade. "Believe what you want, but back home, men twice your size learned to run when they heard that name. She didn't fight for trophies. She fought because she had to, because life gave her no other choice." Amara's jaw tightened. "Uncle," she said again, voice lower now, almost pleading. "Stop." He looked at her then not as a fighter, but as family. For a moment, the old hardness in his face softened. "You told me you were done fighting," he said quietly. "You came here to start over. But when someone tries to strip your dignity, to tell you you're less than they are, you don't walk away from that. You remind them who you are." The silence in the room was heavy. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to dim. Frank studied Amara, realization dawning in his eyes. The way she moved, the calm before the storm. It all made sense now. "You're lightning," he said softly, "aren't you? Amara looked down, ashamed not of her past, but of what it meant to reveal it. "I was," she said, "but that part of me, it almost destroyed me." Elijah shook his head slowly. "No, girl, it saved you." He turned to the others, voice steady as stone. "You people think she's some beginner? She was forged in fights you couldn't imagine. No ring, no referee, just survival." Ava forced a laugh, trying to mask the crack in her confidence. "Cute story," she said, "but this isn't Jamaica. This is my world." Elijah's eyes didn't move. "Then maybe your world's about to change." The weight of his words hung in the air. For the first time, Ava looked unsettled. The people watching, the trainers, even the boxers who'd been whispering, now their eyes were on Amara, not with pity, but curiosity, maybe even respect. Frank stepped closer, his voice low. "If what he says is true, then you don't owe this woman fear." Amara lifted her head. Her eyes found Ava's across the ring, steady as stone. Elijah's final words came like a command. "If you don't want me to tell them who you were, then show them." And in that moment, something shifted. The quiet girl from the Bronx, the invisible worker, the nobody, they were gone. What remained was lightning, standing under bright white lights, ready to remind the world what happens when a storm refuses to stay silent. The lights dimmed, then sharpened white beams slicing through the gym's haze. Every sound seemed amplified. The squeak of shoes, the rustle of tape, the faint click of camera shutters. Amara sat alone on the edge of the ring, wrapping her hands with slow precision. Each pull of tape whispered like a vow. Her fingers moved automatically, practiced, patient. Around her, voices rose and fell. But inside her mind, there was only one echo. Her mother's voice, soft, tired, unbreakable. "Fight with honor, Amara. No matter what they take from you, never let them take that." She closed her eyes, and for a heartbeat, she was back in Jamaica, bare feet on cracked pavement, her mother watching from a doorway as the sun bled behind tin rooftops. The same hands that scrubbed floors were the ones now rapping for war. The same heart that once begged for mercy was now steady, ready. Outside the ring, Ava Monroe was still talking, her phone camera pointed at her own face. "All right, everyone," she said, flashing a smile sharpened by ego. "It's almost showtime. Our little visitor's about to get a front-row lesson in reality." Her followers flooded the chat, hearts, fire emojis, comments like confetti. "Breaker, in this quick." Ava loved the noise. She lived in it. But Amara? She breathed in the silence between beats. The world could scream, and she would still hear only her pulse. Frank Dawson leaned against the ropes, his eyes fixed on her. He'd trained champions before, but this was different. There was something sacred about the way she sat there, still as stone, as if the earth itself had steadied to watch. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Kid," he said softly, "whatever happens out there tonight, I'm proud of you." Amara didn't look up. Her gaze was fixed on the tape in her hands, wrapping, tightening, sealing. "Don't be proud yet," she said quietly. Frank tilted his head. "Why's that?" "Because pride comes after victory," she murmured, "and I'm not done fighting yet." She stood, slow and deliberate. The overhead light cast her shadow long across the mat, thin at first, then stretching, rising, until it touched the ropes. For the first time, Ava turned from her phone, noticing her. The live stream paused, her grin wavering. Amara stepped into the light. Her skin shimmered under the glare, every scar and bruise etched like a story. Her jaw tightened, shoulders squared. The weight of every struggle she'd carried every night, cleaning offices, every sneer, every insult hung behind her like armor. Frank watched, breath caught in his chest. He'd seen fighters try to look fearless before, but this wasn't that. This was something older, deeper. Not the hunger for fame, not the thirst for vengeance. It was the quiet power of someone who had nothing left to prove except to herself. Ava started her live stream again, forcing a laugh. "Guess she's ready," she said, flipping her hair. But her voice trembled, just a little. The crowd didn't notice. Amara flexed her fingers, the tape tight around her knuckles. Every movement felt measured, like music she'd practiced her whole life, but never been allowed to play. The bell hadn't rung yet, but the room already held its breath. Cameras clicked. Whispers died. In that final moment before stepping into the ring, Amara looked up, eyes catching the blinding lights overhead. For a split second, they flickered gold, white, then fire. And somewhere deep in her chest, thunder rolled. The bell rang. Sharp, cold, final. The sound sliced through the tension like a blade, and for one suspended heartbeat, the world stopped breathing. Then, movement. Ava Monroe surged forward, fists flashing gold under the lights. "Let's dance," she hissed, and the first punch tore through the air. Bam! The impact shook the ring post. The crowd roared. Ava moved like a storm, wild, relentless, a hurricane of polished fury. Each strike came faster than the last. Whoosh! Bam! Snap! Her gloves were fire, her rhythm deadly, her grin confident. She wasn't fighting to win, she was fighting to humiliate. But Amara didn't flinch. She slipped between punches like smoke, bending time around her. Each step was measured, each pivot silent. Her eyes focused, unblinking, followed every twitch in Ava's shoulders, every breath, every tell. She wasn't fighting back, she was studying. To the crowd, it looked like hesitation. To Frank Dawson, standing ringside, it looked like calculation. "She's reading her," he muttered, "every move." Ava threw another combo, left, right, hook, cross, all air. Not one hit landed. Sweat flew, feet stomped, the ropes trembled. Amara moved with a grace that didn't belong in a fight. She wasn't dodging, she was dancing. Each miss fed Ava's rage, each slip chipped at her pride. "Stand still," Ava barked, swinging harder, faster, losing rhythm, losing breath. Her punches began to sound desperate. Bam! Whoosh! Bam! Empty echoes of control she no longer had. Then it happened. One misstep. A half-second too slow. Ava lunged, overextended. Amara saw it before it happened. The weight shift, the open guard, the arrogance. She turned her hips, and crack! Her fist met Ava's jaw with surgical precision. The sound rang out clean, sharp, impossible to ignore. Like lightning finding its mark. The entire gym fell silent. Phones stopped recording. Even the echo seemed afraid to move. Ava stumbled back, eyes wide, hand flying to her cheek. She blinked, disoriented, as if trying to understand what had just happened. Elijah Brown chuckled from the sidelines, his voice low, proud. Now she's awake. And she was. Amara exhaled, slow, steady, no smile, no celebration, just focus. Her body loosened, shoulders rolling, rhythm syncing with the beat of her heart. The air around her changed. You could feel it, something ancient, something raw. Ava's nostrils flared. Embarrassment flared hotter than pain. She growled and charged again, swinging wild. Bam, bam, bam. The punches tore at empty space. Amara wasn't there. She flowed around them fluid, invisible, inevitable. Whoosh, step left, pivot, counter. Bam, another strike, clean, quick, controlled. Ava staggered. She's toying with her. Someone whispered from the crowd. No, not toying, teaching. Each movement was art, every dodge a brushstroke, every counter a signature. Ava, the champion, the influencer, the queen of arrogance, looked suddenly human, tired, slow, vulnerable. Frank watched, heart hammering. He'd trained fighters all his life, but this wasn't training. This was instinct weaponized. Ava tried to recover, circling, jabbing, but Amara had already learned her rhythm, stolen her timing. Every attack came a beat too late. Every breath, a gasp. Then Amara shifted. You could see it, the change. No more waiting, no more study. The hunter had seen enough. Bam! A left jab snapped Ava's head. Whoosh! A body shot dug deep. Bam! A right hook followed, fast, merciless. Each punch landed like punctuation on a truth Ava refused to accept. The crowd erupted, gasps, cheers. The noise surged through the room, crashing against the ring like a wave. Phones were back up, streams lit with disbelief. Who is this girl? Someone shouted. Ava stumbled, gloves low, breath ragged. Her arrogance drained with every hit. Amara didn't press. She waited, eyes locked, breathing calm. There was no fury in her, only precision. She wasn't fighting to destroy. She was fighting to remind. The bell rang again, ending the round, but no one heard it. The crowd was still screaming, still replaying that single, perfect hit that shattered an empire of ego. In the corner, Ava spat blood, her glare wild, searching. Across the ring, Amara stood tall, shoulders steady, heartbeat even. Elijah crossed his arms, a small smile playing on his lips. That's lightning, he murmured. You can't outrun the storm. For the first time in her career, Ava Monroe looked uncertain. For the first time, the Queen of the Ring had met someone who didn't kneel. And as Amara raised her gloves, eyes burning beneath the lights, the world understood this wasn't just a fight, it was a reckoning. The second round began with a silence that didn't belong in a boxing gym. No cheers, no laughter, just the low hum of disbelief, the kind that grows when people realize they're watching history being rewritten in real time. Ava Monroe stood in her corner, chest heaving, her confidence cracked but not yet shattered. Her lip bled, her eyes burned. She looked across the ring and saw Amara Johnson calm, still, breathing slow. A storm waiting for its cue. The bell rang. Ava charged, desperate. Bam! A wild swing. Whoosh! Air. Her punches landed nowhere, each one slower, sloppier, weaker than the last. Amara moved differently now, not just defensive, but deliberate. Her steps were soundless, her eyes locked like crosshairs. She wasn't running anymore. She was closing in. The crowd could feel it. The energy shifted like gravity leaning toward one side of the ring. Every movement Amara made carried weight, precision, purpose. The rhythm built again, footsteps, breath, the distant buzz of lights. Ava swung again, her glove brushing air. Amara slipped left, ducked low, and struck. Bam! A straight jab to the ribs. Whoosh! Another to the chin. Snap! A right hook caught Ava mid-turn. Each punch landed clean, sharp, echoing through the gym like thunder rolling off the walls. Ava stumbled, her knees buckled, but she stayed up barely. The arrogance in her eyes flickered into panic. She tried to clinch, to hold, but Amara stepped back, giving her space. Space to fall, space to face herself. Then came the end. Amara shifted her stance, shoulders coiled, eyes narrowing into focus. It wasn't rage driving her now, it was clarity. Bam, left, bam, right, bam, uppercut. A symphony of precision. Ava's head snapped back, her body spun, and before she even realized she was falling, the mat rushed up to meet her. Thud. Silence. For a moment, no one moved. Not the trainers, not the spectators, not even the cameras. Just the sound of Ava's glove scraping the canvas, a slow surrender. Amara stood above her, chest rising and falling, sweat dripping down her jawline. Her fists loosened, her gaze softened. She stepped forward, kneeling beside the woman who had mocked her, doubted her, dismissed her. The room leaned in. Her voice was calm, steady, final. Respect, she said quietly, is earned by character. The words cut deeper than any punch. Ava blinked up at her, eyes wet not from pain, but from understanding. Somewhere in that haze of defeat, she realized she hadn't just lost a fight. She'd lost the illusion that arrogance could ever replace grace. A hush fell again, then a whisper, then a wave. Someone near the back gasped. Another shouted, "She did it!" And then it hit the eruption. The gym exploded with noise. Cheers, cries, disbelief. Phones shot up. Streams flooded with comments. "The Queen has fallen," shouted one voice from the announcer's table. "The Queen has fallen." The phrase caught fire. It leapt from mouth to mouth, from gym to screen, from city to world. Hashtags flooded every platform. Number, lightning strikes. Number, the Queen has fallen. Number, respect is earned. Within minutes, Amara Johnson wasn't just a name. She was a movement. On Ava's live stream, still running, comments poured in by the thousands. This is what real strength looks like. Arrogance met humility and lost. Lightning Johnson just made history. Even Frank Dawson, standing ringside, could only shake his head, eyes shining. He'd seen champions fall before, but never like this. Never with so much silence, so much meaning. Amara stood tall, looking out at the crowd. For the first time, the cheers weren't for a champion they already knew they were, for someone they had underestimated. Someone who had fought not for fame, but for dignity. Ava's eyes met hers again, this time with something unfamiliar respect. She reached for Amara's glove, not to fight, but to rise. And Amara, without hesitation, offered her hand. The cameras captured it, the fallen queen and the woman who had taught her what true power looked like. Under the blinding lights, two stories collided, one ending, one just beginning. As Amara stepped away, Elijah's voice carried over the noise, proud, unshaken. "That's lightning," he said. "She doesn't destroy, she reminds." The crowd kept chanting her name, over and over, until it wasn't just sound anymore, it was rhythm. It was thunder. And as she walked back to her corner, calm and unbroken, Amara didn't smile. She didn't need to. The world already knew. 3 months later, the world looked very different. The video of the fight had crossed 50 million views in its first week. One clip, just 7 seconds long, captured the moment Ava Monroe's body hit the canvas, and Amara Johnson's calm voice echoed over her. "Respect is earned by character." That line became more than a quote. It became a movement. But not for Ava. Her fall was as fast as her rise. Sponsors vanished overnight. Nike, Everlast, Gatorade. They all cut ties, releasing polite statements about brand alignment and values. The Queen of the Ring became the Queen of Silence. Her followers unfollowed. The same audience that once adored her turned her arrogance into memes. Screens replayed her humiliation on loop, every frame a reminder of what pride looks like before it cracks. Ava tried to recover, posted apologies, live-streamed tears, promised change, but no one cared because the world had already chosen a new champion, Amara Johnson. While Ava's empire crumbled, Amara's story spread like wildfire. From sports pages to morning shows, from talk radio to late-night interviews, everyone wanted to know the girl who rewrote the rules, the one who showed the world that greatness doesn't come from privilege, it's built in silence, through hunger and hurt. Under Armour launched a new campaign, bold letters across black screens, "Born Hungry." The face beneath it wasn't Ava's anymore. It was Amara's, chin lifted, eyes steady, fists wrapped. Within weeks, she signed a multi-million-dollar contract with Golden Gloves Promotions, not just for her first fights, but for her story. The girl who came from nowhere had become the woman no one could ignore. But it wasn't just her life that changed. The Empire Boxing Club, once a monument to exclusivity, became something new. Donations flooded in. Frank Dawson, once a quiet trainer in the background, now ran a scholarship program that stretched across the city. Kids from neighborhoods like Amara's filled the gym. The sound of heavy bags and laughter replaced the cold silence of entitlement. Reporters came, cameras rolled, and Frank said the same thing every time. She didn't just win a fight, she opened a door. Ava, meanwhile, sat in a small apartment in Miami, her mansion long gone, her trophies collecting dust in storage. The screens that once lit her name now replayed Amara's face. The champion who forgot humility was now watching the student she tried to humiliate rise higher than she'd ever been. And the internet remembered. They always do. On social media, number Lightning Johnson trended again, this time paired with a new tag, number Fight for Dignity. People from every corner of the world posted their own battles, their own stories of being underestimated. Amara had become more than a fighter. She was proof that pain can build power. That hunger can shape history. Her first professional fight sold out in minutes. Cameras flashed. Commentators whispered about the girl who struck like thunder. And as she stepped into the ring again, her gloves heavy with memory, she carried not the bitterness of her past, but the weight of everyone who had ever been told they didn't belong. Empire Gym's walls now held her photo next to a plaque that read, "Earned, not given." Frank stood beneath it one night, lights dimmed, crowd gone. Elijah Brown walked beside him, smiling quietly. "Told you," the old man said. "She wasn't just a fighter, she was a storm." Frank nodded, watching the shadows dance across her image. "Yeah," he whispered. But this time, the storm didn't destroy. It rebuilt. Outside, the city buzzed with her name. Amara Johnson. The girl they laughed at. The woman they could no longer deny. Justice had found its rhythm, and in the echo of every glove hitting the bag, you could still hear her promise. "Hunger drives me more than fear ever could." Months passed, but the echo of that fight never faded. It wasn't just a victory anymore, it had become a story, a lesson, a spark. Around the world, headlines called her Lightning Johnson, the woman who redefined what strength meant. But for Amara, the fame wasn't the prize. The real victory came when she realized her pain could become someone else's hope. That's how the Lightning Legacy Foundation was born. Built from the same hunger that once kept her awake at night, the foundation's mission was simple: to give chances to those who had none. To help young women from places like Portmore, from neighborhoods where dreams were treated like luxuries. In its first year, the foundation sent dozens of girls to schools, gyms, and academies. They didn't just learn how to fight, they learned how to believe. When reporters asked why she started it, Amara said quietly, "Because no one should have to survive what I did just to be seen." The world listened. Months later, she returned to Jamaica for the opening of the first Lightning Legacy Gym, built in the same district where she once fought in alleyways for scraps. The crowd filled the streets, children, mothers, old neighbors, all standing beneath banners that read, "Earned, not given." Cameras rolled as she took the stage, holding the microphone with hands that had once been weapons but now felt like symbols. "This isn't revenge," she said, her voice steady but soft enough to hush the crowd. "It's redemption, for every girl told she wasn't enough, for every fighter who didn't have a ring, for every voice drowned out by arrogance and privilege. We don't rise to destroy, we rise to show what dignity looks like." The audience erupted. Some cheered, some cried. And in the front row, Frank Dawson stood with his head bowed, eyes glistening. The grizzled trainer who had once doubted whether he should let her fight now watched the woman she had become stronger than pride, brighter than pain. Next to him, Elijah Brown folded his arms, a slow smile creasing his face. "I told you," he whispered, "she was never just a fighter." Frank nodded, tears catching in his throat. "No," he said softly. "She's a reminder that greatness isn't born, it's built." As the applause swelled, Amara lifted her gaze toward the horizon. Cameras flashed, but her eyes weren't on them. They were on the children standing behind the barricades, wide-eyed, hands pressed to their hearts. The future she had fought for was standing right there, watching her. Weeks later, in Las Vegas, under the blinding lights of a sold-out arena, Amara stepped into the ring again, this time not as an underdog, not as a shadow, but as the challenger for the world title. The fight was brutal, beautiful, unforgettable. And when the final bell rang and the referee raised her hand, the crowd roared with a force that shook the rafters. Gold glimmered under the lights as the belt was wrapped around her waist. Cameras zoomed in, capturing the moment the world crowned a new champion. But Amara didn't smile. Instead, she looked down at the belt, running her fingers across its polished surface. In her eyes, you could still see that same quiet fire, the one that began in the back alleys of Portmore, that had survived humiliation, hunger, and doubt. In the corner, Frank wiped a tear from his cheek. Elijah laughed under his breath. Amara lifted the belt high, the light scattering across its surface like lightning across the sky. And in that moment, the noise of the crowd faded, the cheers turned distant. All that remained was a single truth, steady and clear. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't won in the ring. They're forged in the moments when the world tells you who you can't be, and you choose to become it anyway. They tried to bury her. They didn't know she was a seed. From scrubbing office floors to standing beneath the lights of a world championship, Amara Johnson's journey wasn't just about boxing, it was about breaking every chain that told her she didn't belong. She came to America with nothing but hunger, and somewhere between humiliation and hope, she turned that hunger into history. Ava Monroe watched it all unfold from afar. The woman who once ruled the ring now sat quietly in a small apartment, her phone dark, her fame gone. But in that silence, something grew, a realization that came too late. Talent fades, Ava whispered to herself. Character stays. And she was right, because what lifted Amara wasn't talent alone. It was the courage to stand tall when the world told her to kneel, the grace to fight without hate, the strength to forgive without forgetting. Months after her victory, Amara returned to the same streets that once tried to swallow her, the same corners where fists once meant survival. Children followed her through the crowd, shouting her name, eyes wide with belief. She smiled not because she had conquered the world, but because she had finally learned that true victory isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you were right to believe. When asked how it felt to become Lightning Johnson, she laughed softly. "Lightning wasn't who I was," she said. "It's who I became when no one believed in me." And maybe that's the point. The world saw a fighter, but what they really witnessed was dignity in motion. They saw every insult she endured, every door that closed, every moment she was told she wasn't enough, turned into power. Because some storms don't destroy, they reveal. So the next time someone tells you that you don't belong, remember her. Remember the girl they laughed at, the one they underestimated, the one who taught the world that arrogance is loud, but character is louder. Because Amara Johnson didn't just win a fight, she changed what victory means. How many dreams die because of arrogance? How many voices are silenced before they ever get the chance to roar? If Amara's story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell us in the comments, have you ever been underestimated? Because sometimes being doubted isn't a curse, it's a gift. It's the proof you're standing on the edge of something extraordinary. They tried to bury her, but she wasn't meant to stay underground. She was meant to rise, to strike, to remind the world that true power doesn't come from privilege. It comes from the fire of those who refuse to break. And as the lights fade and her name echoes across arenas, one truth remains unshaken: greatness isn't given, it's earned.